Good morning to everyone present here. I cordially welcome you all to TechBharat 2021, Empowering EduTech and HealthTech. TechBharat is an initiative of Laghu Udyog Bharati Karnataka and IMS Foundation. TechBharat is envisioned as a platform to support startups and SMEs and be a guiding light to them in navigating their entrepreneurial journey. We welcome you to this session on technology to healthcare. Making healthcare innovative in its affordability and accessibility is the biggest challenge the world continues to face. This challenge is coupled with challenges in access to information and technology, improvement in healthcare policies, and reorganizing healthcare delivery systems. To discuss this further, we have with us Mr. Chandramouli, CTO of Shankara Netralaya, a not-for-profit missionary institution for ophthalmic care headquartered in Chennai. He is driving technology transformation program with a mission to deliver sustainable and affordable technology for the masses. He would be moderating the session. We thank you for accepting our invitation, sir, and welcome you to this session.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would warmly welcome the panelists for the session. Mr. Sairam Varadarajan, he's a data scientist at H2O.ai. Mr. Mahesh Subramaniam, he's the managing director at Ideal Tech Labs. And Mr. Sachin Wangu, technology manager at IQ Vision. Thank you for accepting our invitation to be part of the panel discussion at TechBharat, and we warmly welcome you. I now request Mr. Chandramouli to take over the session and moderate it. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a privilege to be on this panel and the program. I think we have an interesting cross-section of people. One is a practitioner and adopter of technology, seeing how it really translates into a healthcare setting. And the new data being the oil, I think we have a data scientist on the panel as well. And somebody who can think beyond, I think we have Mahesh representing the future of what we want to do on the technology. So it's welcome all of you to the program. I think to make it a little easier, I think I'd like to make it a little more conversational. I think primarily I just wanted to pick up on all of you in terms of your wealth of experience that you have been having over the years, and in your current role, you see a lot of changes that's happening in your part of industry. So let me first start with Sachin, actually. Sachin, I think you have been driving a lot of digital transformation. You have been driving technology for one of the large chain of hospitals across north of India. So looking at what you do and over the years and what has changed over the years, can you just give us an idea about what kind of technologies you use and what do you think has been the changes that you have been doing over the years, actually? So let's put some perspective to this discussion so that now let's hear from a practitioner what your thoughts are and how do you really see change, first of all, in adoption of technology and say change in technology itself.
Right. So apart from the HMS EMR, which we currently have, so we're using a different set of technologies as well to reach out to the patients. Like in case we have our own contact center or a CRM, you can call it. We have built our own teleconsultation platform around our HMS EMR to make sure we reach out to the more patients. We have started building a patient portal wherein we can build more tech engagement with the patients, wherein patients can log into our portal and see what they have availed, what all benefits are coming up. So what all their medications is, what their prescriptions are. So another platform which we're using currently is also WhatsApp, which we had integrated with our system so that more reach to the patients is also there. So we can reach our patients in terms of WhatsApp as well. Apart from that, text SMS is something, a different platform which everybody has been using since long, but we are leveraging it more because whenever any transactions are happening with respect to patients, so the intimations go to the patient. So he's aware of what is happening. So the interaction within the patient increases. So these are primarily a few things which we are doing it in terms of technology, apart from our regular HMS and EMR. These technologies we have built across using different platforms, different vendors. And one more platform which we're building for a patient engagement is a CRM as well as a BI solution, which gives us more insights towards the patient demographics, as well as a lot of analysis we can do based on the data which we have already. So these sort of platforms we are currently using, and we see that in the coming future, this is going to increase more and more.
Okay, great. So you do around 3,000 to 4,000 appointments a day, is that right? on an average, maybe different on different days.
All right. On an average, somewhere around 2,500 patients a day.
2,500 patients a day. That's quite a lot of data, actually. You have a lot of data which are pretty unstructured. Then you have things around your medical imaging itself.
Right.
Then you have your infrastructure, which is pretty complex in terms of because you have a chain of hospitals across the entire northern India.
Right.
You have a lot of complexity in your solutions, actually, because you are dealing with a lot of point solutions. You're on top of it, you're on a hosted infrastructure. Then cybersecurity. I think there's a lot of data underlying, actually. There you have medical imaging,
Right.
leading into a lot of storage, and so on and so forth. I think there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind, actually. Also, from a patient perspective, you just have a patient portal, which where there's a single point of connect, which in turn connects to around half a dozen systems in behind, actually.
Right.
There is a lot of complexity behind it.
Right.
How do you handle such kind of complexity? I think these are mind-boggling from as an IT manager, providing some seamless experience to the user. I think how do you handle all this stuff? Because you have a host of technologies in the backend, and there's no single technology which is going to help you out, actually.
So we've integrated actually a lot of technologies. A lot of these platforms are our integrated platforms. So constantly we do things which integrate our platforms together. So integration is one area where we constantly focus on.
Brilliant. So that leads, let me push the same question to Sai. Actually, we have Sai is a data scientist. I think what we heard from Sachin is there's a lot of underlying data. The data is largely unstructured. So we heard things like WhatsApp, we heard things like medical imaging, his hospital information system and the clinical records, tons of information about the patient, so on and so forth. I think there's, and the funny part of healthcare, there's a lot of data, there's a lot of unstructured data, and it comes from different data sources, from different applications, and from the patient also. We largely rely on the patient also to provide a lot of inputs. As a data scientist, what do you really look at as a challenge? What do you do? Are you excited about when you heard Sachin talk about the underlying data? And what do you do? What's your take on the data? How does it work? And what do you do as challenges change? Because you have some ideas like AI for good and things like that. I want to hear those visions from how do you want to transform the world of healthcare?
Yes. Thanks, Chandramouli, and thanks, Sachin. I'm hailing from H2O.ai, and so we are more of like consider not as Sachin was kind of like talking about. It was more of a user-centric solutions, so centric applications which we had got. So from H2O standpoint, if you kind of like see, it would be more of a data-centric or like data science-centric applications which we had got. So consider, the exciting part is like thankfully we had got a good amount of data right now. The only thing is, and we had got a good amount of like applications where right from the image or like right from the text or unstructured NLP data, where it could kind of like write prose and it can kind of like write a whole novel out of it, like through GPT-3 or like the techniques which we had got. The challenge which I see is the trust in AI. And the trust in it, because consider, okay, let's take retinopathy detection or like the tumor classification, which we have done with a good amount of consumers with companies back in US. We are also like talking in India right now. So likewise, the challenge which we kind of like see and we want to like emphasize is like gaining the trust in AI. And by putting out like how the decisions are kind of like made, more democratizing the path of like how the model is interpreting the data, and so that it kind of like gives confidence to the decision makers, let's say physicians, practitioners and such, when they kind of like see the results. And the other one is like with respect to the decisions, the end consumer, maybe the patients or whomsoever, they kind of like gain how have confidence with respect to these results as well. So that is one of the biggest challenges, like having the whole closed loop. That is where the challenge which we are kind of like seeing. We are kind of like making a good amount of efforts there in having explainable MLI, explainable AI for sure. So that would be my emphasis for 2021 and maybe for the next 3 years is like gaining the trust in AI for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit it right. See, the biggest challenge which I really see in particularly somebody like a data scientist that you're talking around, making AI as your center of your strategy, actually, because we are talking more and about data. Data become the new oil. Almost, I know for sure, Sachin uses a lot of analytics almost on a minute by minute basis to a certain extent, and a lot of things on a daily basis to make decisions. I think definitely for sure, and I think there's a lot of underlying which is data. So, but for us to really chalk out a journey on a data, I think it's pretty new actually, unlike what other industries have been doing. Pretty much making decisions out of data has been pretty much a new journey as far as healthcare is concerned. And also, we know for sure that AI is driving a lot of things with diabetic retinopathy or radiology and so on and so forth. I think these are something which is pretty new, which has come in. So if you wanted to go back to say Sachin, this is what your AI journey should look like. How do you start actually? Because this is going to be very, very transformative. So we know for sure there is a lot of data, but we are really skeptical about the quality of the data. I think we don't know right now how good the data or how bad the data is about. So if you want to put in a journey on AI, actually, can you suggest somebody like an hospital or a particularly Sachin, this should be a roadmap in terms of your AI adoption or your maturity and so on and so forth, because it's just going to be a journey.
No, definitely. I think it is more of like, okay, I mean, like on the whole, the approach should be, it is not about like worry about the data. Once we have a little bit of like where we could kind of grasp and like consume, that should be the start of AI for sure. Because with regard to the quality of the data, we have got good amount of techniques right back with the ML as well to like circumvent those challenges. So, or even with respect to the unstructured, we could kind of like, there are good amount of techniques in NLP, in images to kind of like, to avoid those like bits for sure. So quality of the data, I think it's definitely a good check, but not predominant or like the most essential check to have for sure. That would be the good start. So once we kind of like have at least a way to consume data, though like how messy that could be, we had that would be the start of the AI. That would be the first recommendation there. And the next one is like definitely, as we were kind of like discussing, Chandramouli sir. So the finding the impact with finding the right challenge is one of the biggest challenges here. So with regard to the organization, with regard to like even for the non-profit organization or anywhere, the AI should be kind of like more of a result driven rather than the approach or like the exploration driven for sure. So with regard to the result driven, like if we could see the end point rather than like taking the approaches would be my recommendation. What I mean is like, okay, is it like more of any where we could kind of like automate some of the steps which we had kind of like have there, add value through time or add value through the solution scalability point. That would be the recommendation there. So it is more of like the use case and the data which they had got. That would be the whole like discussion where we would start with for sure.
Okay, because another problem that we really hear, particularly in the data journey, is this is going to lead to loss of jobs, things like that. Particularly, I don't see that reality in healthcare. So how does the human AI collaboration going to look like in the future? Because this is going to be something dramatically different, because we have seen this a constant threat in other industries, but at least not in healthcare for sure, because there's going to be a hell of a change for sure. You may not be doing the routine things. There could be a personal assistant helping me out. It could be a robo probably, or a digital assistant doing a lot of my routine things. But how do you really define human AI collaboration? Because you are in the midst of a journey which is purely data-centric, data science, something next gen, which all looks like science fiction right now. But I don't think we have any handle on it. But how do you think human AI collaboration should look like in the future, particularly in the healthcare sector, actually?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think worrying about the job perspective, it is a little bit of like, it is, I think it wouldn't be the case for sure. I mean, we have been there with respect to the job automating a lot of stuff. Now we are gonna like automate it through AI or like machine learning, and definitely like it's more of a human centric for sure. Human centric machine learning is what we are kind of like having as an approach. So like it is more of, so let's take, at the end of the day, the final decision is gonna be with humans. So or like building like those. Human-centric applications would be the way where we're gonna like deal with for sure. So that if that is a way like yeah, the job profile and responsibilities may change, but there is definitely human is always in the loop. And yeah, I mean like science fiction, I mean like it's good for imaginations, but definitely yeah, it's about the discussion as well, but it would also like come back to the skill set for sure. I mean, so consider, because now where like a 40 years of profile where they could kind of like sustain with the skill set which they have gained 40 years back, now it is kind of like reduced to 5 years, 10 years. I mean, like I could say kind of like I was more on the data science. So that is the change, and people are like adapting towards that for sure. And it's betterment for our decision making capabilities as well. Yeah, AI it's kind of helping in a pretty good way. So not worrying about that one for sure would be my take.
I agree. Thank you. Thank you. That's great, actually. So Mahesh, I think you're on the other side. Now you're a service provider, so you work with clients globally and also in India. No, we are always looking at a lot of innovation, actually, from industry players and the health tech. Particularly, we are a consumer. Actually, we are a consumer of technology. To be very honest, I don't think we have a right to be the development area, but I think we are only a large consumer of technology. We name it, I think there is a requirement for us to use out in our journey of dealing with patients, engagements, and so on and so forth. So now, what do you think keeps you going? What do you work on? Actually, what are the changes that you're really seeing?
First of all, thanks, Molly. Thank you for having me in the panel. I hope all of you guys hear me well. Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah. So healthcare, as you all know, it's been really stretched in recent times. Things have changed forever. There's a lot of demand for tech, and it's at the peak. And then we need innovation right now. And from what we have been seeing from our customers, there's been a lot of new requests. To give you a couple of examples, we have a good interest on next generation telemedicine. People, right now in India, telemedicine is getting into mainstream, but in Western markets, especially US and Europe, they want the next generation. So, they want more wearable techs, remote patient monitoring. They want to do the vitals from afar. All the home healthcare tools are coming up. These new requirements, a wave of requirements, are all coming to us, and that's a big challenge right now. So we need a lot of skills and expertise to solve them. So that's one big thing. And then the other was, Sai might have told this, but there's a high level use of AI. NLP is needed. There is more touch-free interactions. People are asking, and then customers are now focused into facial and emotion recognition. Imaging and related AI is all coming, and then the skills and products on that area are getting a lot of traction. So we get a lot of requests for POCs, and then quick solutions which were not thought before. So those are some of the things that are coming to us. And last, there's also a need to reduce the clinical burden. They need chatbots, virtual assistants, just to handle all the non-acute cases. So people ask for those requirements. There's also symptom checking, managing the appointments in a better way with more AI. The medication reminders. These are other, requirements. And so to sum it up, it's exciting time. I mean, we have a lot of new things and, to bring to the industry. And obviously, there is a sense of urgency and, who comes first, who does it first, right? And as accelerators, yeah, and as accelerators, I think, yeah, we are really happy, and we have the expertise because we work with a lot of startups, and in startups there is always a creativity, some passion to the work, and it's good that we work with them, we carry the same. And so yeah, that's what is driving us. That's the key trend, Molly.
Yeah, well, I think you touched upon a lot of good stuff. You're all cutting edge, I would definitely say. But looking at healthcare, I think I did mention about one thing. It's figuring out a right use case, actually. So, but if you're doing into too many things, I think you also probably end up losing focus, or you may be doing a lot of stuff which may not really of great benefit to you or to your customer and things like that. How do you really identify one use case and blow it up to a scale? I think you're done your CRO work. I think that's probably driven by a customer and whatever it is. And if you can draw some examples of some of your real customer success stories, which help you to think differently and not blowing this up, I think that will be useful. So the whole idea is, we just heard Sai talking about managing a requirement. Actually, the biggest problem is defining a use case, particularly in health. I think there's a lot of diversity in what we do in health. Now, so for example, Sachin is into a high care setting. There could be multi-speciality, which is a very different use case, which may require different technology absorption. I think we touched upon all the hard buttons in terms of what areas that, where the demands are, but how do you really identify a use case, blow it up, which could be of a different scale as an accelerator? Because I think innovation that you bring to the table is, as an accelerator, is about providing a scale, providing us newer ways of doing things, integrating into something new which didn't exist before, providing a different solution to the whole aspect of the requirement, actually. Can you just explain us with relevant to some of your recent experiences?
Yeah, yes, it is definitely a problem. Right now, what happens is, I'll give you an example. So, especially on this CRO. So we had a client. They are a clinical research organization, and then the biggest issue they were going through where they had this voluntary management system. Volunteers come in, and then there's tests done, and there's a lot of FDA regulations that they have to manage. And some of the challenges they had were, how do you fit in these, requirements using technology? How do you fix these with technologies? And facial recognition is very pretty simple one. Like the volunteers, once they take a medicine, they have to go through a cycle. There is a period, and then the complete during the period they need to be completely monitored. And so there are a lot of equipments, devices used, and to sum it up, they were really stuck. Like there are hundreds of use cases, like and they always come with a lot of requirements. And with the skills that we have, there's one team who are completely tech savvy. They know how to implement facial recognition. They know how to implement biometric identification, stuff like that. But then there is a real need where the real domain expertise is with the customer, and they want this 100 things, and then how do we use this and fit those 10 important things? So we go through an iterative process, narrow down, bring them into table. Sometimes we visit the customer. So it is a cycle, Molly. It takes a month before we finalize and come up with a very good, most critical use case, right? And then then it's we are there to help them make it quick. So that's how we solve. It's always interactive, goes on cycle, and then some new solutions are. We do demo. We do more POCs. In fact, sometimes we have to complete in a week's time and go back to them, and then narrow down further, and then take to the next approach, and then it goes on and on. Yeah.
There's a lot of collaborative innovation that what I can really see from what you have just heard. Let's go back to Sachin. Actually, Sachin, thing is, we are all in the midst of a pandemic. I think it's nearly a year now already. I think we changed lives dramatically, particularly for single specialty hospitals. Say, like I think you are even forced to shut down for some time, which had not been heard of before. So what do you think as the big change post-pandemic in terms of technology adoption? I think that's one of the big change that we really see is what changes have you made to your business? Have you made any business changes also from a technology adoption? Now, I know that you're driving a lot of home care and so on and so forth. I think these are things that have not been done before. Does technology enable you to help you to do some of those things differently over a period of time? But I think I wanted to hear from you in terms of your technology adoption post-pandemic. How easy or how difficult, particularly many of us were working remotely, and technology adoption in health, particularly health has been a high-touch industry rather than a high-tech industry. So how did it happen? And did you do anything at all differently?
Yes, definitely. Since new business models are also evolving for us as well. So post-pandemic, we saw a lot of, in terms of, if we talk about patients not willing to visit us because they were too scared, they were too fearful of coming. So a few models evolved, like for e-pharmacy, we evolved as a model. Previously, we were not doing something like that. So how did technology help? We created technology to reach to the patients to make sure that we deliver the pharmaceuticals to their home, whatever they require at the need. Don't need to come. Home vision care, was a new concept which we built across around this time. That if patient is not willing to come, let our optometrist and a person from the pharmacy visit the patient, do a teleconsultation with the doctor from his home, sitting at his home place. So a lot of technology used to drive all this. So when an optometrist is sitting at somebody's home, he has to connect it to a doctor. So again, the role of technology is there.
Okay.
So technology has to drive. So same for dry eyes and computer vision syndromes. They were not heard of before. They were there, but they were not prominent. After the pandemic, a lot of things are happening on dry eyes and computer vision syndrome because a lot of screen time has increased. So a lot of new business models have evolved around this time. So we changed our business models as well, depending on the technology, because technology is the driver right now. One time was there when technology was a backbone, or you can say is a support function, but right now technology is the driver for a business. So you can't see it as a different.
Fantastic. So is there anything new that apart from your business model, like your home, things like that? I know you're doing your e-commerce in your pharmacy, for example. I think these are something that you've not done before. I think I think the one is that there is a demand from the customer or the patient, and I know you're also forced to do a lot of things which have not been done before. Right. So besides creating these ecosystems, besides creating this technology networks, taking people to the home where it matters and things like that, what else is in your pipeline? Is there something new that you're trying to do, like anything on your data-centric models? You are doing a lot of stuff on analytics. What are all the things that is helping you to change or reshape your business?
So a lot of analytics is happening around. So that is helping us evolve our businesses. We do a lot of analytics. We created a lot of logics around the new business models, how they are working, what all needs to be done. One is, which you rightly mentioned, that the patient is driving the change. One is what we are planning to drive it. Say, for example, we drove a new concept which was not there. Teleconsultation is there, everybody knows. But telecross consultation is what we drove. So we are an ophthalmic chain of hospitals. So for example, every hospital does have a general physician or a cataract counselor, but he doesn't have a retina consultant there. So he's sitting in a different location and the patient has visited us. Now the cataract doctor or the consultant feels that he needs a retina opinion. So we use the platform of teleconsultation to do a telecross consultation from one hospital to a different hospital, making sure that the patient is taken care of well. So all the models actually which we create are revolving around the patients. Like as in Sai and Mahesh both talk about AI and all. So for me, we also use, but we don't use a software for this, apart from the diabetic retinopathy program. we use our softwares created in-house so that we also build some intelligence. So giving you an example, for example, we see a chronic patient, we should be able to address him very fast.
Right.
So a chronic patient like a DR patient is constantly on a medication. So certain patients need a consistent medication throughout the year for that. So previously those kind of analytics was not there. We created those analytics so that we can reach out to the patient because he is in need of a medication throughout the year. So those kind of models also evolve over the business. Analytics has helped us a lot. We recently created a lot of dashboards in Power BI using a Power BI technology from Microsoft. So that has helped us a lot in achieving a lot of different stuff which we're looking now differently.
Brilliant, brilliant. So your KPIs, I've seen some of your KPIs, very interesting to really look at it from a patient engagement perspective, because at the end of the day, technology and health is largely either driving down your costs or optimizing your cost one side, and the other is ensuring patient safety and quality of services. So can you give us some examples of some of these areas where you use technology differently and the changes that you're trying to do? We all understand quality from a process quality standpoint, or now we look into cost as optimizing business efficiencies, driving analytics and stuff like that. Is there anything more that's in your works that you have not done before, which you are trying to use it with data?
Yes, in terms of quality, definitely I would like to explain that our quality for NPS is currently at 80. So I think it's a very good quality score for NPS. So we're doing relatively good in that area. In terms of digital, this is what we have started recently. We used to do digital marketing as well, but after the COVID pandemic happened, we started investing more on the digital media so that we can reach out to more patients. So that is something which we are looking very forward to, because now the patient is also becoming tech savvy. So there was a time when we need to teach a patient how to switch on the camera for a teleconsultation. Now patient already knows how to switch on. So that advancement has also come. So we are seeing a lot of traction in digital media where we can leverage it to be more patient centric and to build a patient engagement plan. Brilliant, brilliant.
Yeah, thanks, Sachin. I think that gives me a segue to task Sai on. The pandemic had led to a lot of data, particularly we see, and particularly on the internet. I think there's a lot of data models, open source data sets, so on and so forth. So what does HTO work upon? Actually, we are also talking about a lot of autonomous computing. We are not only talking about things like robotics, for example. Now we suddenly saw a rise of robots roaming inside the hospital, spraying things on OT or whatever people and things like that. Suddenly, a lot of intelligent devices came into the picture. So how do you see the change that is dramatically coming around, and where we are really driving a lot of change from an enterprise application to something autonomous using some robots and something which doesn't exist before so far? I think these are pretty exciting times for a healthcare adoption. Actually, what do you see as change? How are these algorithmic stuff which is really helping an hospital to drive those changes?
So from HTO standpoint, I mean, definitely we are a community-driven company. So consider a good amount of projects which we had got are open source right from the start. And algorithms like H2O3, sparkling water, H2O for GPUs, even data one of where crunching data, manipulating data is kind of way faster with respect to the platforms in Python. So that's how we kind of that's our business model to start with. We have some enterprise support solutions like our flagship product driverless AI, it kind of automates feature engineering, model fine tuning and the model deployment as well, where we kind of have the modules at the end of the day in Java, Python, whatnot tools, even on the edge devices in mobile where we could deploy. So that's how we kind of that's our expertise there. And with regard to the algorithms, I agree totally. There is a little bit of push though like fortunately or unfortunately, I mean, like we are kind of like getting accelerated with these use cases per se in this COVID times for sure. And like with regard to that, definitely like consider it is not like it is a done and dusted problem statements which we had kind of like seen, and like some of the new explorations which we are kind of like looking at it as like consider zero shot learning or like more of an unsupervised learning as well, which is kind of like some of the explorations which we have got where like the zero shot learning is like where without most of the many of the training data, what if we could kind of like right away kind of classify whether it is the right sentiment or wrong sentiment kind of explorations. But these like thankfully I think it is more of like the adaptation is kind of like happening. It kind of like brews more of the UI perspective, because the algorithm perspective, like they have been there at least from H2O standpoint. I mean, like it's been like for the last like 2-3 years where we kind of like started with driverless AI. It kind of like automates the whole process on building the model at the end of the day with to the supervised learning, but like more of a user interface, and that's one of the where it kind of like brews with these in like with these tryouts with the robots and like with the new these menial jobs which is kind of like taking over for sure. And but H2Os like for AI for good, or like how we are kind of like looking at it, like again as I kind of like emphasized at the start, it's more of the explainable part. Like again, we had got the best engineers, like data scientists in the world. Like there is a platform called Kaggle where people kind of like compete a lot in online predictions and such. So with respect to that, it's one of the like the biggest data science platform. Like there are like 150 plus Kaggle grandmasters, and 15 of them work in H2O, contribute back to the like a product and the community for sure. And like we are like one of the best like a creamy team with just 200 people where we are trying to make an impact for sure. And using that kind of talent, that is we are kind of like investing more of our time in explainable AI, like so that we could kind of like at the end of the day, like that's where we kind of like see the end result should be, where the model should explain, it should be explainable and gain the trust with the best talents which we have got. So that's our approach. And if you kind of like see with respect to the educational institutions for the communities, the same the flagship product which we kind of like have, it has been kind of like it's a freeware for those institutions for sure. That's and even like right from the wildlife conservation, detecting like let's take the counts of like the wild animals where they had got a chance to like put up the camera there. Our model is we kind of like support them in an open manner for those like AF for good, even for the healthcare institutions as well. So those are like efforts kind of like getting back to like giving back to the community. And like to be honest, as I said, like H2O kind of like started as an open source community, and we are kind of like investing good amount of time and efforts, resources there for sure, along with the flagship products. So that's how we kind of like see our like a path going forward as well.
Brilliant, brilliant. So, like what all we know is, unlike many other industries, healthcare is a lot of data centric. And the data resides only within the hospital premises because we are bound by concerns and regulatory and so on and so forth. I think there's a lot of stuff around the data itself. So, but what I heard from you is there's an open way to deal with it through some structured partnerships where technology innovators and hospitals working together, building trust using a lot of these explainable AI and things like that. Relooking at innovation, coming out with some pilots and like what Mahesh just told on developing pilots and things like that. I think these are things as sort of the AI itself as a way forward. I think that's pretty much a good way to deal with data itself. Going back to Mahesh, I think that this is something very interesting which I wanted to ask, particularly as an accelerator. We have seen particularly the pandemic. I think there is a lot of chaos because of the change. We have been forced to shut down. Suddenly, everybody has to work from remotely from home. We didn't have access to internet or power and things like India, for example. Typically, learned a lot of last mile deliveries, infrastructure issues, and so on and so forth. So how do you deal, particularly if you're working on something pretty new, looking at, you said telemedicine kind of stuff, which are going to be very, very different to what it was before. Now, how do you deal with such kind of a chaos in the short run? Because there is also an expectation from a delivery partner like you to deliver something so dramatically different and at the touch of a button, actually. So how do you deal with such kind of chaos?
Oh,
As an
thank you.
innovator, I think that's something for us to understand from you as being on the other side of the business, actually.
Molly, that was a brilliant question. Almost all startups have this problem, right? Like, it's pretty difficult to keep a good creative and a talent, and then hiring is a big challenge. And so okay, so we work very employee centric. I say like employee first culture, but we deliver customer first. I mean, we keep customer first. Keep that in mind. So what we have done is we have always nurtured this kind of culture in the organization. So like I mentioned before, most of startups, right, you have the founders with you. So you work with the founders, you get high exposure. Your employees are always engaged in the cutting edge. And then and then of course you have all these conventional ways, right, like motivating by giving options, more perks, and better and better salary structures. And so being a idea accelerator, which means I work with a lot of startups, and also my teams are part of intrapreneurial engagements for bigger companies. So my team, we always keep young and motivated talent, and we put a lot of effort to achieve that. And then in this pandemic, yes, we need to make quicker decisions, move forward. Of course, remote work was always part of our culture. So adjusting was not that hard when you compare other industries and other companies. But for us, we adopted very flexible timing. We adopted remote work culture. uh, we were always connected in Slack. Of course, we have almost accounts on all video conferencing tools. You call it Zoom, or you call it GoToMeeting. You have a Teams. So we have to get into all this kind of mode. But more than that, our retention has been great, because the way we built the company, we really spent a good amount of effort and strategic planning in terms of recruitment. So that kind of helped us. And in these times, where of course there isn't a 100% fit. If you look at the technology that we are working on and the startups we are helping, they are really driving so many new things, right? And
Right.
you can't actually hire someone with everything, right? It's going to be a challenge. So what we do is we provide a lot of training. Sometimes we do a lot of pair programming. You work with another mentor, and you sit with them, and you work together on the same use case. And sometimes you build something together. Two heads are always better than one. So that kind of really helped a lot. And it also created a more conversational approach, because the teams are always on calls and trying to exchange ideas. And the way they have been doing this for all these years really helped us in this situation.
Good. Good.
Yeah, the team was we didn't feel a bigger problem. In fact, we had some good appreciations. We met some very tight deadlines. And from the HR point, yeah, of course, we try to create fun and a family oriented environment. That obviously helped. So that sums it up. Yeah.
Brilliant. Brilliant. That's pretty insightful. Sachin, for lack of time, I think this could be our last ask to you. So you are already a very complex delivery structure. 40 plus clinics across northern India, very highly resource intensive, distributed home care, whatever you name it, I think there is a complexity between people, then there is a complexity behind technology, then there is a complexity behind requirements. I think everybody wants it yesterday. So what are your top 3 challenges, in terms of managing such kind of enormous challenges that you see on the ground?
So 3 top challenges I could currently thought of is, one is the patient engagement, which we need to build to keep it constant. Secondly is the adoption of the new technologies with respect to patients as well as doctors. Because any technology we launch, doctors have also to be adapted to this.
Correct.
And last but not the least, I think they should be on the top as well, data security. That is one of the top 3 challenges which the entire healthcare industry will be facing, with people working from home and doing from stuff with BYOD devices and all. Data security and privacy is the top thing.
I think that hopefully have not been breached yet.
Yeah.
That's great. Yes, I just wanted to understand that's because you are living on data. Actually, data is everybody wants data for something or the other. We just heard Sachin saying data security. Does it concern you at all, or how is it like? What are your top 3?
So yeah, definitely yes. So our we had got good amount of solutions on the cybersecurity, consider detecting fraudulent logo images or malicious domains. We did get a chance but I mean we kind of had even with respect to the money laundering or more those use cases as well, where understanding those anomalies it kind of falls in the similar line to an extent. So we had got a good amount of use cases and trials for sure, and but the in that scenario it is more of a vertical specific use case and vertical and use case specific discussions. Definitely we had got a good a security expert team for sure, and I mean I'm kind of voicing over for the team right now, which I know, and definitely yes. And those use cases, so consider right from the banking till even right now with the the KYC from the healthcare as well, PHI and PI information. We do kind of have a good amount of discussions or from even with respect to our platform as well, where we kind of anonymize even if we kind of extract logs. So it's rightly, I mean it's rightly embedded with respect to our discussions for sure. Would like to what I want to emphasize here, and yeah, definitely more than us. So we are just the enablers of the data what they had got, and the use case what they had got. We are kind of putting that on a rocket and shipping it faster. So that's our enablement. And with respect to that journey, we are kind of making sure we are providing the secure platform. But more of consider with respect to the healthcare at least. I mean I think it would be more of for us it's more of the job, and we are kind of trying to do the best there. But I could see the emphasis. I could understand being there with the Dexcom and Medtronic for in the healthcare domain space back in US. So definitely it kind of emphasis. I see the emphasis there. But yeah, more or less, I've been on the both sides of the coin for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And Mahesh, I think what do you think is your top 3?
I mean, in the top 3 in terms of what a innovation, how an incubator can improve, or
yeah, because you are serving a customer and more so a healthcare customer. Assuming, now, what do you think? You want to do how to please your customer in many ways, because the expectations are he needs to satisfy his own patient actually more than the customer actually. So how do you ensure that the end customer are really satisfied if you are a service provider?
Right. Yeah. Right now, the 3 things that are needed, Jamali, what I feel is, there are always this, commitments in terms of, POCs, right? But when it practically it's getting used, that's when you see the real challenge. When things go live, that's when things go wrong. So, personally, me and my team, what we do is we just don't, work towards the milestone for the sake of it, but we take utmost care in supporting them, after they go live. That's the real value we give it to the end customer, because that's when the business really gets a value there. So as far as my top challenges, first I put my team to make sure that they really use it like a customer. They test it like a customer and they prove it to the customer. So I put a lot of emphasis on this, after go live, how do I support, and what could go wrong, on the live. So that's one critical item I think of. And then the other is, also emphasize more on don't get too fancy, like sometimes you make it too fancy and then you end up like, not really useful. It looks good, but it doesn't perform good. So that's the third part.
True.
Yeah, that's the second part. And then the third part is most challenging is make it, really usable and viable. Sometimes you make it too expensive and then you end up, it doesn't serve the purpose there, right? There has to be a value. So I also try to take care of these three things. What I often see with my customers is the startup, they miss the whole MVP point of it, right? Like
Correct.
they try to build the whole thing, and then so it is a challenge that we face every day with our customers, because in their mind as a founder or in their mind as a investor, they want to just build, make most of it, right? But then they lose track, and so we try to keep it tied together. We do our best to make sure they create an MVP which is most successful for them now, and then can lead to the next phase of victory. So those are the three things, Molly.
Thank you. I think so. Just to put things in perspective about this 1 hour of discussion, I think certainly pandemic has changed our world for sure within the healthcare. I can definitely see a rise in patient expectations, because the patient anymore is no more docile. I think you want it on a WhatsApp, even in mid of the night. I think that's what we heard Sachin speaking. And I think so the complexity of engaging on a social media, it's compelling for anyone, but I think we have already seen Sachin talking about data privacy and security and so on and so forth. I think how do we balance risk versus convenience? I think that's quite a statement to make, actually. I think, but we are living in an instant gratification, where you really know you're measured by the response, but you're also equally measured by any adverse things that you really do. I think that's what we really learned in the emerging scenario in healthcare. But what this means is the service enhancers, because we are no more bound by working in a physical place. We just heard everyone talking about working remotely or from wherever it could be. Sachin talked about retina care being provided to a non-retina specialty patient. I think those are things that are bound to happen. So service enhancement is becoming increasingly order of the day, and thanks to a powerful network that the healthcare is building today, I think these are quite possible. I think, and what this leads to is something a lot of collaborative innovation. I think we talked about Sai coming out with a lot of data-centric stuff, ecosystems, open source data sets and stuff like that. I think where somebody else is collaborating in the real world, can really get the benefit of it for a healthcare customer. I think that's also emerging, actually. And organizational forms, actually, this is something very, very different, which is not a domain of most of these healthcare organizations. Suddenly we see a lot of specialties being used, not necessarily they're forming part of our core organization itself. There could be a service provider, say somebody like an accelerator coming out with something very new being adopted on a hosted managed service model, I think, which we have not been so familiar with before. I think there's a whole lot of change that I can really see from a technology standpoint. And we learned some two new adjectives or terminologies. One was social distancing. I don't think I ever knew there was a word that existed before the pandemic. And also hygiene becomes a center stage of our activity business, actually. So every 30 seconds, you're supposed to wash hands or put your nose cover and so on and so forth. It was completely new to us working in a normal life. But looking at it, translating from a technology standpoint, there's a lot of stuff which we can really think as things like, digital. I think now I stepped upon topics about like, how do we go contactless actually? Things like digital payments, facial, voice, all those things becoming center stage. And certainly telemedicine, what existed physically then becomes virtual. So you are looking at a digital twin coming into the mainstream. Certainly, these are all things healthcare as an industry was not really focused on. And all these things were quite possible only with cloud and analytics and so on and so forth. I think these are fundamentally game changers to a larger extent. And the underlying of all these things is the data, because we really know that something is going right or wrong. I think that's where a lot of focus on data to see how do you really govern the data, manage it, clean it, look at a lot of collaborative innovation using smart devices and so on and so forth. I think these are all things which are something that as an industry we are trying to adopt and drive more innovation so that at the end of the day, we really meet the patient needs. I think that's what we heard from all of you guys. Thanks for being forthcoming and so innovative in your work, and keep up your focus. And I'm definitely sure I think there's a lot more that we can learn from all of you, and where to go. Certainly. Thank you so much. Thanks, Mahesh. Thanks, Sachin. Thanks, Sai, for all your wisdom and insights.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
I think that was a very good interaction, and I'm sure the audience would be able to take some takeaways from this. Thank you so much for everybody for being part of TechBharat. A heartfelt wishes to everybody.